what would be your definition of financial literacy?
Okay, that's a good question, right? So let's kind of break it down before I answer the question. I guess I'll kind of speak a little bit about the background, right? So I think coming up like most people in in different backgrounds and groups, you may not get any financial literacy in your home, and honestly, that's where the foundations of financial literacy are taught, right, in the home. And so if you come from one of those communities or or a group of people who are less likely to get that type of information, then that's an informational lag that kind of has generational impact. So for me, I was kind of fortunate enough to kind of do different things, and I was fortunate enough to go to school and major in finance. And during that course of education, I learned a lot, and I took a real interest in personal finance, and then kind of understanding how personal finance drives every element of our lives. Then you kind of realize how important it is. So to answer your question, what is financial literacy, right? So financial literacy at a base level is understanding how our actions with money or with things that have value affect us day for day and for every day to come, right? And so baseline, to kind of give like a parallel, right? If you got a college student that goes to college and gets a credit card and doesn't really understand money and say, oh, well, on the credit card I have a $5,000 limit, so I can spend $5,000 that I don't have, right? And they spend it, right? But that same college student spent 5,000 with no way to repay the 5,000, and then ultimately when that credit card interest rate hits 40 or 30 or 40%, then that 5,000 in college expense for your first year turns into 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, right? And not understanding how that action today would impact you 5 years, 10 years down the road is the baseline definition of financial literacy.
Nice.
I am not an expert on any of those topics, but I'm a user of the money system, and I think I have financial literacy. So, what I would define financial literacy is the ability for someone to balance a simple equation: what do you earn, and what do you spend. And that equation is, sometimes unbalanced because we spend more by using tools that are given by banks, basically, making us sucker and get us to buy a bigger home, or get us to buy a bigger car, or get us to buy something else. God knows what. But if anybody can balance a simple equation of what is income and what do you spend, they are financially literate in my book. That's all you have to do. You have to say, I make $5,000 a month. If you spend $5,000 a month, then you got a zero. So that means you live day to day. And if your income is 5,000 and you spend 4,000, you save 1,000. Awesome job. You saved 1/5 of your income. Is that good? No. Is that going to cover everything? No. So your equation needs to have some variables that makes it more interesting. So if income is equal to spend, then you are a zero-sum game. You're just never going to get out of this. You're just going to be day to day. And if your income is greater, then if your saving is there and a saving covers critical things, and then it covers long-term things, those are the two. It becomes complicated as it grows. That's why people lose it. But those who have figured out a formula where income is equal to spend plus say a short-term saving for emergencies plus long-term investment. So most people don't get to do the long-term. Most people get to do the short-term. They have a emergency fund of a few $1,000s. If they lose the job, they would be able to survive for a few weeks to a few months at the best, and that's about it. That's really what I see happening in America. And I'm basing this approach on a very good talk show that I used to listen to when I was driving around. I don't do too much driving. It's called Dave Ramsey's. There's a guy named Dave Ramsey. He's a great talk show about financial literacy and financial acumen. And he's a self-made multi-millionaire now, of course, but he was broke, and he learned all the tricks of how to be broke and also how to get out of it. I highly recommend that show. It's a radio show on AM, and he's a great guy. He's a Christian man, so if somebody has an issue with some of the things that he will cover will have some Christian background. I'm not a Christian, and I don't follow religion, but that is the only thing that somebody has to live with. That he does bring in some religious things into it, but I think if you have no problem with it, that's great. But yeah, so I see it as a simple equation that needs to be taught in school, and children should be taught that equation. And the better person, the better more literate person would have an equation with the income is equal to spend plus short term plus long term. And those who do this well, they add another one called giving. For another bucket, which is how much they give back. to the community, to their whatever cause. And so anybody with those kind of equation usually do very well, very, very well. I myself, my wife and I both followed this principle for a long time since we're college, so since finishing college. And I think it takes a long time because I think even Einstein said the one of the wonder of the world is the what is that what is that term, the fact the God, I'm forgetting that term, like the financial term that is a nice financial term for company. The one of the wonders should be or is the compounding of a number. So if you can save some and grow it, and it just gets bigger and bigger, and the more bigger it gets, the bigger it just eventually exponentially grows. So it grows really well. So I think most people don't know these things, and they're not taught. They're not bad people. They're just simply not taught. And the a credit card is the biggest risk to financial literacy. And people go for a credit card more than they go for anything else. So as soon as they got a credit card, they're spending, and they're broke. And also school, another thing that breaks people is the student loan. Those are the two things. I don't think student loan should exist in America. Nobody should be required to pay a dime for their bachelor's degree. After that, yes, but up to bachelor's degree, if you do some community service, or give time to the country, or join a government job or something, you should be able to completely be out of student loan. And I think we don't do that. We act like a first class country, and first world country, but we treat our citizens like a third world country. Even some third world countries actually don't charge their citizens for a basic bachelor's degree education, and that is sad. That is one part where people don't learn anything, and financial literacy is not taught. Sorry for the long rant.
Yes, thank you, Kabir, for that answer. And just
I know how money works, but everybody has their own reality. Money works for people differently. If you come from an inheritance, money is completely paper. You don't need to do much to earn it. So it's like if you have and I'm going to give you the way I think. If anybody has $5 million, they really don't need to work. In a very high standard way, not buy yachts, not fly first class everywhere. But if they have $5 million in America, they can invest it so well. The return will be more than 10% in a conservative way. And if you go crazy, you can go bigger return. And so within the instruments of the financial system, I'm not talking about some crypto, I'm not talking about some anything else. And if you do that, you could go lucky and blow up and get $1 billion. But with a $5 million exit, somebody exited let's say $5 million with $5 million. Usually, I will give you an example. Friends go to join Amazon, in their, not now, but early, let's say 10 years ago, would join Amazon with a master's degree. They would work like a slave because Amazon works their engineers like slave. They're one of the notorious companies that my friends tell me. Now, I have not worked there. So, and then I'm not talking delivery guys. These are master's degree computer scientists, computer science people. They would work for 4 years and pick up enough stock options and stocks. Eventually, they will exit with a $4 to $5 million. And then that person never have to work. If their ambition is to have a good standard American life, they would be above average American. They would be able to live very happily. They would have enough income coming in after paying tax and everything. So to someone that has inherited 10 times that, or many times that, or something, the money is a piece of paper, means nothing to them. For us, most of us who actually have to earn it, our money works differently. We have to count it. We have to be responsible, and so realities, I think, define how you see money. And everybody is different. Everybody looks at it differently. Somebody has to be living day to day, and that's a different thing. In many parts of the world, $1 means a ton. So money is the human invention that has divided us, that has done us so much damage to us. But unfortunately, we need some sort of unit, some sort of tool, and money is that tool right now. I don't think it's a good form. I hope it evolves to something more like what we have in Star Treks. You work, you earn credits, and you just can buy pretty much whatever you need. But today, money does. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Kabir makes a good point. But let's, I think to touch on the question, what is money, right? You kind of gotta go back in time to understand the evolution of it, right? And let's do that for a second. Right before the invention of civilized societies, we were hunters and gatherer type communities, right? So the only thing that mattered is food, water, shelter, right, and clothing. Make sense? And generally, hunter gatherer communities were had the skill set to be able to find and purify their water, right? Find and cook their food, okay, and then garden and make their crop, and ultimately make make their own clothing based on the resources that they had available to them. Does that make sense? So that's how human beings existed prior to the invention of money, right? But then civilization began, right? And in a civilized society, you remove the skill sets traditionally associated with the hunter and gatherer, and then you kind of get into a specialized environment. So, for example, at the beginning of civilization, individuals went from being hunters and gatherers and farmers, right, to tradesmen, right, specializing in producing a specific good or service. Okay, and as such, there was issues, right, because then trade became involved. Right, we needed to trade. Hey, I have this good. I'm a specialist in this good and service, and you're a specialist in that good and service. We need to trade because you have what I want, and I have what you want. Okay, so then we had to create a store of value, if you will, to be able to facilitate trade, right? And so historically, that store of value was gold or silver, right? These types of precious metals that, based on their scarcity, we said, hey, we deemed and pegged value to them based on their scarcity, right? And then you advance to modern day society where we've transformed. We no longer use physical silver and gold as stores of value to facilitate trade. We now use paper dollars, right? Our dollar bills issued by central banks, okay? Not pegged to anything to, in essence, facilitate trade, right? So I think in some senses, money represents in our society, money is like the physical representation of work. What does that mean, right? Hey, you exist right now. You need a car, right? Well, somebody has to build the car, and that takes actual work, right? Somebody has to show up, assemble things. An engineer has to design things. A lot of things have to happen for the car to exist. So in order to acquire the car, you need to have money, right? Because work was put into to assembling the car, and so you need to have something that can be traded for work in another form, right? And money is that thing that can be traded for work. Anything that we have, work has to get put into it to produce it. So money is, in essence, the facilitator of that. So to me, money is like a physical representation of work, right? And that's why people who have a lot of money don't have to do a lot of work, right? Because the money that they have, they can exchange that. Whereas people who don't have money have to work for their money, right? Continuously in kind of a slave-esque manner. Does that make sense? So I mean, and I know this is an abstract kind of concept of looking at it, but to me, that's kind of like a broad brushed approach to what is money, right? That's kind of how I would break it down in a non-technical way.
I love that. I love the analogy, and of course, definitely, hard work is the key. So, I mean, that is self-explanatory, which leads to my next question. What would you say is the most effective skill to be good for good financial literacy? Or let me rephrase that. What would be the most effective tool for good financial literacy?
Okay, I'll touch on it, and I'll let Kabir take the floor. Right, that's a much better question. Let's ask this: what is the best way for an individual to gain financial literacy? Right, and it's 2022, and what I'm going to say is unpopular, right? But the best way, honestly, is just through reading, right? Everything that exists, that folks have done throughout time, they've generally put it in a book. Right. And so for me, my personal journey to understanding financial literacy was simply just a journey of learning and reading from people who had that type of literacy. Right. Kabir mentioned the guy, Dave Ramsey, right, who kind of, like you mentioned, right, is this, he's kind of a super conservative in his approach. Right. Religious guy, et cetera, et cetera. But his fundamentals are good. Right. And if you're looking for just a good tool to, hey, I want to learn finance. Right. You got, Dave Ramsey Money Makeover, or Dave Ramsey, just any Dave Ramsey book, or Susie Orman, or there's tons of individuals that are out there that have a lot of good content on just basic financial literacy, right? And so to me, that's where it starts. Anybody, they're looking for, hey, I don't understand the concept of money, but not just money, finances, but not just finances, personal finance, but not just that. How does my decision making play into how much money I may or may not have? Kabir talked about the equation, right? The equation to get money, all right? And that equation effectively is a cash flow equation. What does that mean, cash flow? Hey, income greater than expenditure, you got free cash flow, right? Free cash flow, right, can then be used to invest in things that you don't have to work for, right? And the wealthiest people make money not through work, but by having their money work for them. right? And that's the simple formula, right? So I lay that out just in a simple, in a simple way, because kind of that's what I did, right? So I'll just kind of lay it out like this. When I was 18 years old, I got a credit card and said, hey, I need to build my credit. Why? Because I wanted to buy a house. Why did I want to buy a house? Because I wanted to own a business, and I knew I needed to have an asset in order to borrow money or be able to have the ability to go to a bank and borrow something and tie my asset to it in order to launch a business. So at 18, got a credit card, worked. I would buy something on the credit card, pay it off every month just to build credit history, right? And then I worked, right? I worked kind of night and day, and I didn't buy anything outside of what I needed to spend money on, right? So I had a lot of free cash flow just from working all the time and building that free cash flow. And what I did with that free cash flow is I went to the bank, right, after saving up X amount of money and after having credit at 19 years old, and I said, hey, bank, I want to buy a house, right? And I was fortunate enough to buy that house, in 2009, right at the end of, right when the real estate market had collapsed and homes were nothing, right? They were as cheap as anything. And I remember the underwriter saying, hey, I don't even think we can lend to you, because I was a permanent resident at the time, right? I was an immigrant, so I wasn't even a citizen. And I remember going through the process, and eventually, they wrote the loan, right? They wrote the loan. I bought the house, right? And you fast forward today, and numerous houses, real estate business, the whole nine yards, right? And what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is that the majority of money I've built has not been necessarily through me working. It's been through either assets that you ultimately need money to acquire, right, or investments that ultimately you need free cash flow to be able to obtain. And so, to me, if the concept is how do I build wealth, how do I have money, right? The answer is not necessarily to work for your money, right? Because the wealthiest people don't necessarily work for their money. If you actually look at it, the wealthiest people have a lot of people working for them, which ultimately exponentially, exponentially heightens their ability to gain wealth, assets, money, etc. Right? And so that's kind of my perspective on that process, right? But to understand it, you got to understand baseline level, right? How free cash flow ties into your ability to build wealth through investments, right?
Yes, sir. Thanks for that, Matthew. Kabir?
Yeah, sorry, I was helping my kid. Yeah, what Matthew said is beautiful. I mean, he's very knowledgeable in this topic and in this conversation. I think comes out very clearly. Matthew, I first time meeting you, so very nice meeting you. And I think you know what you're talking about for sure. So yeah, education. I mean, reading is education. So if you have interest in going forward, the only way to do is read your way out of it, right? Read and learn, and you'll find tools. You'll find tools. So I have a different take. I didn't I think one of the easiest way to build wealth, in my opinion, is that some people will be looking for this the lucky deals, like getting lottery, which is finding a deal so good that it's too good to be true often, and sometimes unfortunately they are, and they destroy you. So like 2009 is when I bought my home too. I bought my home 2000, actually, yeah, 9ish, so my current home, and it doubles the price. It has doubled the value right now. So that's wonderful, and it's and I did a 15-year, so imagine where I'm sitting. So these things are that was a good dip, knowing when to take in, when to jump in, and those are the really important things. People don't know that. If you don't read the materials, if you don't see where real estate is going, and you wait for it to be on CNN, then it's too late. You got to read early. You got to see the trend, and then those trends. Same thing with crypto and anything else. You got to read before it's too hot and too many people are jumping in. It's the FOMO effect, right? So reading information, getting information ahead of time, access to people and information is the key to be very successful quickly. And that's the part. If you want to do it traditionally, it's very with a job, it's very difficult to get ahead from very far without a second hustle, without having a second thing going. So have a steady job. Like in a government, let's say federal government pays not much, and state government doesn't pay much. But having that and having on the side doing something, trying to build something, that is another way. Because at the end of the government job, you end up with a very good healthcare plan that is unbelievable. One of the like my cost, the mortgage, my cost going forward will be more and more as I get older. It'll be the healthcare, because it is going to be more costly to get the premium healthcare that I want for my family. So, but something like a government job gives you pretty much the best of the class, and used to, at least, maybe they're changing. But so planning things like knowing that if a spouse works for the government, and you do the business, or you do something crazy, like something that is phenomenally going to change your trajectory of money, then have a stable person doing the stable thing, getting everything under cover, and then you do the crazy business or do the ideas and things. So that sort of relationship works really well in building a substantial asset. I'm talking from my personal, friends and family experiences that I've seen. Whenever double income is available, man, it just you have a bigger shovel. You're a bigger shovel. You have two shovels going in. You're gonna be able to lift a lot. So I would say early access to information, reading through reading and education, and a partnership. Hopefully, a husband, wife, or whatever works. It's a partnership where you have one person covering the base. Kind of the protecting the Ford with health insurance, roof on top of everybody's head, and some food. And the other one is going crazy. And this is America. You have to go crazy. You have to do it. Absolutely, you can invent the way. Invent your way. The ceiling is so high for, like, I'm an immigrant too. The ceiling is so high that you don't have to worry about reaching it. You are not going to go. There is ceiling. There is definitely ceiling, but ceiling is so high, and that's what I see. So I think everybody should be excited to try. And if you don't try, you're never gonna be successful. I'm gonna take a pause, guys. I'm gonna help my kid. Okay, I'll be back.
Thanks,
All right, Kabir, appreciate that perspective.
Career. Yes, and I think you answered the second. The next question would be how to deal with expenses.
Yeah,
Uh,
so my kind of personal financial philosophy is that you should build your position to a statute where unexpected expenses, obviously they take you back, but they don't throw your whole thing off track. And what does that mean, right? You got to be able to kind of understand what are your numbers. Numbers meaning what numbers are important for you to save or have access to or whatever for you to feel safe, right? Safety. You know what I mean? Hey, my car tire goes out. Something happens and I lose my job. I have enough wiggle room to be safe. Okay, and that's different for everybody, right? There's different metrics. Hey, you need to have a month of expenses, or 2 to 3 months, or 6 months, right? And that all is based on individual, right? That's the beauty of kind of finance and personal finance, is because it's just that personal, right? What works for me can't work for somebody else, right? Because we have a different profile and different situation. So I guess to answer your question, for unexpected expenses, to me, at the baseline of it, you got to operate the person like a business would operate. Do you understand? And here's what I mean. Unless you're a nonprofit, businesses operate to profit, right? In business, we call operating profit free cash flow, meaning money that they're saving from the activities of waking up, providing a service, and then selling that service, and then paying their expenses. That operating profit, that money that's left over after all the bills are paid, is the business savings. And smart businesses take that operating profit and they reinvest it in the business, and that's how they grow the business. Same thing in a household, right? Smart people, doesn't matter if you worked at McDonald's, right? That's kind of another element that we think. We think you got to make a high paying job to make it work. You don't. The reason you don't is because this is all numbers, right? And when it comes to numbers, all you got to do is to make sure that the math makes sense. So, for example, let's just break it down. If I only make $1,000, okay, that's all I make, right? And the cheapest one bedroom apartment is $800, right? I probably can't afford a one bedroom apartment, right? So I may need to stay at home with mom. I may need to crash on a buddy's couch, or I may need to find 2 or 3 roommates to go half on a 2 bedroom, right? Where the numbers work a little bit better, right? So I can, instead of spending 800 for rent, maybe I only spend 300, right? And that way I have 700, 100 for this, 100 for that. Next thing you know, I might have 500 in cash flow, right? And I take the 500 in cash flow after 5 months, right? And then I got $1,500. Okay. And now it's like, okay, cool. Now I got $1,500, but 5 months have gone by and I've gone to McDonald's, and I was a cashier, but instead of being a cashier, I noticed that if you're a manager, okay, you get a little extra money, but you got to put in a little extra work. So then I say,
Proactive.
hey, yeah. So then I say, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and say, I've been here for 5 months. I've been working my tail off. I want the management position. I want to be on a management track, right? And then, hey, if your performance proves that you're worth it, maybe you get a raise, right? And you take that
Leverage.
raise. You get what I'm saying? And then you continue, and then hopefully that 1,500 over 5 months turns into $3,000 over 10 months, and then you get a raise, and in 2 years, next thing you know, you got hopefully 10, 20,000, and then you say, well, I'm done with McDonald's. I've set my sight on something bigger and better, right? I've proven my work history. I've done this, but you continue to do that, right? Looking to get an operating profit month by month, week by week, second by second, building your reserves, building your nest egg, right? with the idea, with the goal is that you're building wealth, and that's what you're doing. I see a lot of confusion over the concept of money modern day, right? There's a concept that money is the thing you see on television with the entertainer, the athlete, the whatever. That is not money. Even the ultra wealthy, the facade that exists of money that applies to those very few people is not money in the real sense, right? What do I mean by that? I mean, you take a book like The Millionaire Next Door, right? Great book, okay? It tells you the profile of the average millionaire in America, right? And numerically, the majority of millionaires in America, right, fit a certain profile. And they don't fit the profile like you think they fit, right? They're average Joes, right? The guys you see every day and you have no clue, right? Why? Because they've worked their way up and now they own the auto body shop, right, around the corner. Or they work their way up and it's a hair salon, a barbershop there, or something else there, and they're a millionaire, right? We got to change how we think of money, right? The Instagram money, the flashy money, it exists because you can see it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's real mathematically speaking. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of I don't know if I hit the question or if I kind of went on a side topic. I think you got to understand how wealth is built, right? It's not built quickly, right? And that's something I had to find out the hard way, right? I had to lose money, right, on numerous occasions to find out that how you actually build money is over time, smart decisions over time, not necessarily the riskiest bets that one time and then you hit it big, like the lotto, like Kabir was talking about, or something like that, right? But like I said, everyone has a different experience, right? If you talk to a fellow who bought Dogecoin at a certain point in time and held on to it, and he's now a millionaire, right? He's not going to have the same concept of money that I do, right? So I mean, I definitely invite different perspectives to the concept of money and wealth building. But I think my concept of wealth building is a blue collar version, right? A one size fits all, meaning that anybody can do it, right? You don't have to be special. You don't have to be lucky. You just have to have a plan, have a little bit of information, and execute every day.
Yes, sir. You fail to plan, you plan to fail. Well said. And I like Kabir mentioned crypto. I don't know if knowledge is having some technical difficulties, but crypto. What is crypto for the beginners? What is cryptocurrency?
Well, it's a good segue, right? What is cryptocurrency? And I think the answer to that, you know, you know, varying people will give you different answers. I'll tell you what my perspective on crypto is. Right? Is crypto is to me, is a version